All right. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you happen to be. Luis Geraldo from ScalePad coming at you here for MSP Confidential every Friday at noon Pacific. We're here, unless we're not, and you never know when that's going to be. So, you keep tabs on that. Today, I have the distinct pleasure of welcoming what I've consider a good friend and an exceptional dude all around, Mr. Kelvin Tegelaar. Kelvin, how are you,
Wow,
man?
Luis. Wow, that was very good pronunciation. Did you practice?
Well, I've known a little bit of Dutch, like 5 words, for probably 20 years. And I take much passion and care about people's names and their pronunciations. In fact, I could even make the G a little more throaty if I wanted to. I could say Tegelaar, and then
Ooh.
I would be even more local sounding. But first order of business is actually something I wanted to. Although it's not a pop top, I do want to celebrate with you
That's
a little
beautiful.
moment of reflection. Let's see if it makes any kind of pop. Uh,
Close
so
enough.
so here's to not only the William but to William, of course. Um, I know that meant a lot back in the day. We were talking about when that happened, and
Yeah.
so here's to William.
Thanks, Luis.
So welcome. I know it's a little bit later for you. You're in the Netherlands, of course. It's probably close to 9 p.m. Thanks for hanging out on what is
Yeah.
considered your weekend at this point.
Yeah, no problem. I'm always up for having fun, especially with friends like you. I mean, these kind of calls are always the sort of break that I need right before the weekend. It sort of is the separation between talking to some friends about MSPs and about what we do, and then just going into the weekend completely mind off and just enjoying my time.
Yeah. Well, I always get such a kick talking to you because it gives me perspective. Whenever I feel like my life is busy, I just think about you, and then my life doesn't feel so busy. And so that perspective is very powerful in very important moments. And so talking of busy, you've got obviously your CTO gig at Lime, you've got SIP, you've got CyberDrain, you've got your MVP, global MVP status to maintain there. And of course, you're super busy with the community, MSP Geek, the conference. You're part of the organizing committee, and then traveling to conferences all over the world. So, dude, like,
Oh,
tell me
yeah.
a little bit about how or if you compartmentalize some of this work, because, I feel like IT people in general always have something else going on. And sometimes it's just a big old mishmash of stuff. But tell me your strategy there, if you have one.
So the strategy is do not have a strategy. No, I'll be very honest. I am lucky enough that over the years, and you've known me for a long time, where I was able to always build the business. So Lime Networks is a business that's already very established, and that means that I can take small breaks from the day to day. It doesn't mean I have to be involved every day. It doesn't mean I have to be there to put out fires or I can think about long term strategy instead of just what is coming in the next week or the next couple of weeks. That helps a lot in being able to pursue secondary passions like CyberDrain, SIP, community, all of that stuff. It also helps refocus a lot of things because I get so involved inside of all of these events, the communities. I get to go to for example, in next week I'm at IT Nation, or in 2 weeks I'm at IT Nation, and I'll be able to just relax, talk to people there, and get inspiration for where I want to take my own business. So I think it helps to really take that step back, saying, I don't always want to be working in the business. I absolutely want to be working in the business at specific moments in time, but I don't want to do that constantly. I also want to work on the business a lot. And thanks to my partners, I've been able to just, yeah, do that for a very long time. And now I'm reaping the rewards.
Yeah, and I kind of found a little bit of this myself with the MSP and IT Glue first, and obviously a little bit of overlap when I joined ScalePad because I was still with the MSP. But it's just how much of one thing feeds the other, and I'm sure your work on SIP is critical to Lime in their day-to-day operations. I would expect Lime is using SIP every day. And so these things kind of tend to feed each other. And then obviously your expertise in an MSP is 100% requirement to developing SIP the way that most MSPs would use it. And so, I totally get the importance of that. Tell me about, now it's been 2 years since your MVP with Microsoft. Um, I only ever hear people sort of mention that they got it. It's kind of an honor and all that stuff. But I'm curious, sort of what happens behind the scenes. What is going on with the whole MVP thing that people may
Whew.
not know about?
Okay, so it's for those that don't know, the MVP is a Microsoft Most Valued Professional, and it is it's not a certification or something you can achieve by performing a lot of tests or having a lot of knowledge. It's about being involved in the community and spreading what you know to them. So it doesn't even mean you have to be the matter expert on everything Microsoft. You can have a very specific core focus and just know a lot about that, and just spread that around people, educate them, teach them on how to use products, or not even how to use products, but teach them how to find the products they need to use,
Right.
which is just like a skill on its own. This is my third year as an MVP because I got awarded halfway through, so the second awarding phase, but third year. Um, I think that the way to getting an MVP is by never being focused on getting an MVP. And I've always put it very much akin to earning an Oscar. You don't make a movie because you want to earn an Oscar. You make a movie because you think it's going to be awesome. And that is the same methodology you should use to getting these type of recognitions from your community. And it doesn't even have to be the Microsoft MVP award. It could be any award like that. But as long as you focus on, I'm trying to do good, everything else will come on its own. And I do have to say that there is this sort of hidden pressure that gets put on you after you get your first MVP. And that pressure is, oh God, I really want to get it a second time. And I'll be a little bit ashamed if I don't. Like, I might have failed my community. It becomes this thing in the sky where you're actually working towards it again, which works detrimental because the moment that you are up for re-election for an MVP or a re-awarding for an MVP, you send in, these have been my community contributions in the past year, in the last 12 months. And these have been, and you write a sort of short essay on, this is the reason why I believe I still earn this award. And that's the moment where it actually takes so much introspection. You have to look inside and see, like, why do I believe I deserve this award? Not the things that I've done, but why do I actually believe it? And I think that because the MVP awarding system is somewhat of a black box, you send in your essay, you send in your community results, and you hope it's passed or failed. You don't get anything else. Um, I think most of it really weighs heavily on the type of person you are. If you are constantly contributing to the community in some way, even if it isn't something directly technical, even if you haven't written 100 blog posts, but you're trying to help people elevate themselves, I think you'll always be rewarded at that point.
Yeah.
It's a focus thing.
No, and I don't feel like you are planning about how to contribute to the community. It's obviously something that is now very innate to your being, to your the way that you are. I certainly feel that way, and so it's something that I think comes naturally to people who are community contributors. They just feel sort of this galvanizing mission of just bringing the people together. Like Ray Orsini is one of those
Yeah.
guys who's constantly trying to figure out ways to bring people together, have interesting conversations. And there's so many folks like that, by the way. I'm he just came to mind because he's also doing sort of the live streaming and the podcasts and all these things. But there are so many people giving so much of themselves every day. So anyways, just my way of recognizing your contribution, because back when I was trying to PowerShell my way through MSP, I certainly called on your expertise, and you were always available, always happy to lend a helping hand, review, my silly syntax in the PowerShell script to help me figure out what I was doing wrong. And that stuff is always so invaluable because you are very much teaching, the MSPs how to fish. And so I love that. But CyberDrain is kind of, I guess, to jump over from MVP to CyberDrain, we'll probably jump all over the place. But CyberDrain is so interesting because I feel like it got started from back in the day. You're doing a bunch of IT glue scripts and auto documentation stuff. Um, Tell me a bit of the history of CyberDrain and why that was its own sort of little beast.
Yeah, so a lot of the things that I do are often just to remind myself of things. And CyberDrain started really as a little blog, like, okay, hey, you know what? These are actually my secret little notes, and I'll find them. And then eventually someone else in the MSP channel found them. And it sort of snowballed from there because then it transformed into this tech blog for MSPs where I try to most of the time I had ready to use scripts on the blog, but I tried to have people understand that this was a concept that they could apply to anything else they use. So the IT glue Autodoc scripts are a perfect example for that. It actually didn't matter what kind of documentation system you had. You could convert it to an HTML file and put that HTML file in your documentation system, or you could upload it to SharePoint, or you could do all these kind of things where I focused on core concepts instead of just looking at um, the way that you would utilize this one script. There was always a method to utilize the concept I taught you in other types of situations.
Yeah.
So I think that the growth of that was really like, okay, I'm enjoying writing this, and I just kept on going, and I saw that there was this elevation of the level of PowerShell inside of MSPs. There were people starting to talk about it more. There was more talk about how you're going to work RMM agnostically. That's one of my friends, a familiar face to you, Gavin Stone, wrote a fantastic blog about how you, as an MSP, you use PowerShell to make sure that you can switch products or make sure that you don't get stuck with a specific product or vendor when you don't have to be. It really helped in that evolution of freeing everyone up a little.
Well, and I feel like this was how long did you start CyberDrain ago?
Oh, 5
Yeah, I was going to say
years?
like 2017, 2018,
Yeah.
around there. And I feel like I went through a phase where like you taught me how to use custom functions in Azure for secure management of keys and stuff like for use with APIs. And so it was just a fascinating, time to be in the space where people were starting to really share some of the techniques around engaging with APIs and connecting data. Because I don't know, maybe 10 years ago, MSPs were perhaps not connecting as much of their stuff via PowerShell and cloud and whatnot as they are, today. But you must get a lot of people asking about some of the scripts, or this is not working for me. And I feel like, doing any kind of community effort comes with a certain level of support that you have to continue providing to the
Yeah.
community. And that's probably a little bit of a struggle, but also fun to do in the right tone and in the right mindset. But tell me a little bit about that dynamic.
Yeah, so there's two levels of people that ask questions. There's people that really want to learn something, and there's people that just want an answer because they want to get on with their day and they don't want to involve any of their own time into it. And the people that want to learn something are the ones I'm most interested in helping always. It's the guys that ask questions not because they like, oh, I'm stuck, but they ask questions like, why am I doing it this way? What am I supposed to do if this and this happens afterwards? How am I thinking about the process of this script, or how am I thinking about the process of this automation in general? And I like answering those questions because that's where my own interests lie, and I don't really want to give people a ready-made answer like, oh, here, do that and you're done. That doesn't work that way for me. It also is a bit like you said, there's a huge difference in tone that people have as well. Like inside of some communities, you have people that are really demanding and that come at you like, hey, I saw you made the script, so I demand you fix it. I'm like, yeah, I'm sorry, but if it's not working for you, then you'll have to figure it out on your own.
Mm.
There's balance to be had there. I do have to say that with the release of SIP ish, maybe a little bit earlier than SIP, I started blogging a bit less. Not because there's less subjects to write about, because there's still millions of scripts I could write and millions of scripts I have written that I could blog about. But it's just that I always have to make sure I invest my time into what matters most. some point. And yeah, I had to make the hard choice. Like, okay, I'll have to stop logging for a little bit and now focus on SIP. And maybe at some point I'll return to the blogging, or I'll find a balance somewhere else.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I think those also go in waves. You know, you might be deep in some issue with SIP that you're trying to solve, and that, you know, you kind of have to go horse blinders and really, really focus on that particular issue for a little while, and that you kind of have no choice but to forget of all the other things that are going on. So, you know, nice that you can fortunately step away from some of your CTO responsibilities, that you have a little bit of that room for experimentation because especially where like building software or scripting is concerned, I always found that I had to do it at night. Like there's no chance that I could actually reasonably work on any of this stuff during the day with the amount of distractions and other things going on. And are you a creature of the night for your development work?
Um, I want to say no, because then it looks like I'm an absolute nerd always sitting behind my computer. But then again, I am an absolute nerd always sitting behind my computer. So yeah, I am. I am. I do have to say that most of the development time of SIP is always like early evening, right after work time, and I have a bit of inspiration. Still have some energy left at the end of the day. I try to sort of focus it on that. But most of the times, I'm chatting to friends overseas in the States and these kind of things, and they are up at very different times than I am. So I sort of matched my schedule to that slowly, and I go to bed really late. I wake up really late too, so I'm lucky enough for that. So it's yeah, being a night owl is a thing for when you're doing this kind of development stuff.
Yeah, well, you know, I suppose you get to have the lazy mornings if most of your stuff is with the U.S. folks or, you know, North American folks.
Exactly.
Then
Yeah.
um, the whole thing around SIP was interesting. You and I sat down in Miami a couple weeks ago for a delicious breakfast, and and I'm not sure if you can share this data or this stat that you were sharing with me then, but you were telling me about some numbers of how many folks are actually using SIP for
Yeah.
GDAP migrations. Is that something you can share?
Yeah, so that Microsoft told me that I'm absolutely open to share these statistics. So some smaller SIP statistics to start with, like we have 4,000 active installations, but we have one tenant, one client that manages 62,000 tenants inside of
Ooh,
SIP, which is
wow.
absolutely insane. It's a CSP that does all their work through the platform, so that's pretty awesome. But there was one very cool statistic that Microsoft told me, which is that 60% of all non Microsoft migrations have been performed via SIP.
Like the
That is
GDAP migration
60%
from
of the
DAP to
GDAP
GDAP.
migrations from DAP to GDAP, exactly, which is an absolute insane amount. Like I asked them to gather some more statistics about it. Microsoft themselves has done something called the MLT, the Microsoft led transitions. That's to get all the partners over to GDAP. That happened to all partners, no matter if you migrated using SIP or any of the other tooling. But of all the automated tooling that was used, only 40% used either Microsoft Lighthouse, Microsoft GDAP migration tooling, and 60% used my tool, which is to me still a little bit mind blowing. It's I am so excited about those small details make it really worth it, and make me understand that I've hit the right note with this type of software.
That's incredible, man. And these are also numbers which, by the way, are probably at a whole other scale because I can't imagine. Well, there's probably a few transient folks that, you know, they get SIP, they do their GDAP migrations and probably move away.
Yeah.
Did you have a number for the total number of managed tenants inside of SIP?
I don't have an exact number because, well, I could get the exact number right now because we do collect some statistics, but it's a little bit over 100,000 total managed tenants.
Nice.
That is, of course, with one, like I said, we have one really big CSP that has 64,000 tenants already in there. So that's a large number of tenants that, yeah. So if even if we remove that, it's still so many MSPs that are benefiting from this, protecting their clients, setting standards, or deploying Intune templates. And like you said, there's a lot of people that just use
Mm,
SIP for the GDAP migration. It's actually something we saw, like when Microsoft announced GDAP. We saw that more people were starting to use SIP specifically for the migration, and either they stuck around and kept using it, or they just used it for the migration, which is absolutely fine by me. Please use it just to migrate because it makes everything so much simpler.
yeah. Um, when I built Monkeybox, which was a documentation platform that I had set out to solve my own sort of pain of sharing data documentation wise with, one of the hindsight learnings of it is as soon as I started showing it to people, people wanted it. And, there was no plan to commercialize it initially. It was kind of this proof of concept, trying to solve this internal pain point of sharing data. And I'm curious if you went through any kind of pivot like that with SIP. Like, was this is solving, scratching your own itch at some point, or were you always planning to build this for the community?
So SIP was 100% SSD or SDD, spite driven development. The market wasn't responding to our needs. RMM vendors, let's name them the big ones, ConnectWise, Kaseya, Enable, they all didn't react to the needs of the market regarding cloud platform management. They were having very much a wait and see approach, and I even spoke to one large RMM vendor that said, "Our clients don't use Microsoft 365. We think." Never put any research into it. And then Microsoft comes out with a statistic that out of all the managed services provider in the world, something like 91% has at least one client on M365 or more. So it's something that I was frustrated at because we weren't getting, or MSPs that were managing M365 weren't getting the attention that they deserve and weren't getting the tools that they need to operate. Um, and it changed the market. I'm very glad to say that now there's so many people that are starting to see that M365 management is important. Big RMM vendors are starting to catch up, creating their own M365 management portals. I think 4 or 5 other companies appeared right after SIP, like, oh hey, we're doing this now too. It's a market that needed some activation, some disruption, and I'm very proud that SIP was able to do that.
Yeah. Well, take note, everybody. SDD, spite driven development. This
Spy
is
driven development.
an important motivator, in crucial moments of getting, stuff done. Well, and kudos, because not only is a SIP an incredibly useful and helpful platform, for this, but you are maintaining a breakneck speed of development and updates to this. Um, and so tell me a little bit about, is this kind of getting a bit into the software development, thought process of things? Or maybe it's not, maybe it's just community driven. But tell me a little bit about how you think about the development of SIP, because, some of it's going to be like, oh, I need to solve this problem, this other problem. But some things have to be manifested out of thin air sometimes, for new functionality, new ideas. Tell me a bit about your thoughts there.
Oh, that is a hard question because a lot of it is community involvement. There's specific models you have as a SaaS company to grow your company. You have the sales led growth, you have product led growth, and there's this newer turn of events, sort of, where you have community led growth. You letting your community lead you into this more reactionary response to what their needs are, instead of trying to predict what their needs are, which is what you do with sales led growth and product led growth. um, I'm trying to react on what our community is asking for, and that's why I always try to gather as much information about, hey, what are other MSPs doing outside of Lime Networks, what are other MSPs doing that take a lot of time, and from there on I try to start building. Now currently we have a roadmap that's a little more than 50 items long, and we have a release cycle every 2 weeks where we just like refresh all the roadmap items as well to see, like, is it still current and is it still active, which really helps. It also helps that SIP isn't just me anymore. I have some amazing partners that are working with me to make sure that I can grow SIP to where it needs to go. But we also have 39 active contributors, all from different MSPs. 39 contributors that all have a slightly different vision of how an MSP is supposed to work, and we can combine that vision into something beautiful. So I think that the development process is more of it is reactionary to the community, but it isn't reactionary in the sense of, oh, we'll go this way now, oh, we go that way now. No, it's always a longer term mindset of how do we keep MSP secure and how do we help them? How do we help them save time?
I wonder if this shows a bit of who are your most active contributors are. There's probably a page.
Yeah, right there, contributors. So there's actually a couple of contributors. There's one especially that I will always consider one of my closest friends, and one of the people that knows most about SIP next to me, and that's John Dupree. John Dupree works at an MSP, and he helped me create so much inside of SIP. He is the type of person that sees something is lacking and tries to help in building it. John is amazing in each sense because the way we work together, he predicts my next move. I'm developing something, I'm pushing it to the repository. He sees what I'm making, already starts making what I'm going to need 5 minutes away from me. So it's he works very much like that.
Hmm.
That's amazing to see.
Have you ever gotten unexpected pull requests? And for those not familiar with software development, pull requests, especially in a community, GitHub like this, is when other people say, "Hey, here is a code merge. I'd like you to consider, merging into the main fork because that's my contribution." So I'm curious if you ever had some wild or interesting or surprising pull requests.
There's a couple of them where I was like, "Holy crap! Did this just happen?" One of them being a Microsoft employee, David Berenbier, actually saying like, "Oh, hey, we need to correct this in the documentation. We need to fix this. We need to do this," and contributing code directly. He decided, "Oh, hey, there's a small mistake in the code here. Let me fix that," and that was an actual Microsoft employee fixing stuff for us. Other cases were that there was an issue created inside the SIP repository in the issues list, and that I got a call from the Lighthouse, the Microsoft Lighthouse team, where they said like, "Oh, hey, we saw this issue in the SIP repository. We created a new API to solve that problem for you. Feel
No
free to
way.
use this API." I actually got a call from Microsoft to tell me that they created an API specifically for an issue inside of my repository. So those are amazing moments. That's like it's sort of the recognition externally that people are really seeing. Like, okay, hey, we're monitoring this and we're seeing the growth. There's a lot of those moments. Also, people where you wouldn't expect, like someone that isn't a developer at all, contributing either code, a front end fix, typographic stuff, all these kind of things. And there's very much in the start of SIP, I did this based on what I knew at that moment in time. And that wasn't a lot about software development. I've always said, I'm not a software developer, I'm not a developer at all, I'm a PowerShell guy, and I needed to learn a lot of new concepts. And there was actually this team of two contributors, Kevin Grube and Gary Gagnon, who said like, "What you're doing right now using those HTML templates is wrong. We're going to write a new front end for you and explain to you how to use it." And they did that in a couple of weeks' time. They worked together to create an entirely new front end and went like, "Here you go. This is how you use it." They had sessions with me and my friends inside of the SIP Discord. We have we have a community of the developers inside of Discord where they actually gave sessions explaining on, okay, this is how you should do this type of software development. And these are people that have been in the SaaS market for ages already. So they understood exactly how it was supposed to go. And they were just willing to help because they saw value inside of SIP.
So, I think in software, even in IT, you hear the term tech debt quite a lot because there's always stuff that you have to deprioritize for bigger things, bigger initiatives, bigger priorities. And I'm curious if you've been able to manage, tech debt in a reasonable way. If code is not getting, too squirrely and out of control, overarchingly speaking. But tell me a little bit about how you view the whole tech debt scenario.
I'm lucky enough that because SIP is built on very specific technologies, we use Azure Static Web Apps and Azure Functions. You can't accumulate tech debt because it'll break the entire application somewhere along the line. So you are forced to constantly revisit every hack or quick workaround you made. And no, everyone knows that nothing is as permanent as a quick workaround. You're forced to revisit that because of the technology we use. We use very specific serverless and cloud only technologies, and because of that, it helps you to not accumulate as much tech debt as you normally would. And of course, there's always going to be like these small things like using a CMD that's out of date. But we have specific guidelines to try to prevent that as much as possible for contributors. And like I said, there's a lot of revisiting, and because we're releasing every 2 weeks, you sometimes have to revisit your code. And there's situations where I'm looking at it, and I'm like, "What idiot wrote that?" Oh wait, that's me. I'm the idiot.
Yeah,
It
to
it,
to
it,
do
it
to do in the
happens.
code.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, and I
exactly.
feel like there's also the underlying component of security of not only your code, but doing things in a secure way from how you build, functions and apps and things inside of your application. And I'm curious just how you've approached a bit of this security piece because, software development security is a whole other layer, than IT security, I imagine. And so I'm just curious to hear your take.
My very first thing when I started SIP was I wanted to be secure by design. And being secure by design doesn't mean, look, I code everything completely right. It means that I'm going to do right from the start. We have automated code testing, which only catches so much. But we also, from the start, I immediately put up my own money. The first month, we had a pen test done on our entire code base. The first month we started SIP, we're repeating that every 6 months. I just put up my own money and said, like, I don't care what it costs. I just want MSPs to feel like they can trust this application. So every 6 months, we have a security pen testing company. In some cases, it's Northwave. In other cases, it's Fox IT and like these somewhat local Dutch companies, because that's of course easy for me to communicate with. But they create a report based on that, saying like, hey, these are the current code issues. These are security issues that you have. And the thing is that I work on a level of complete transparency. So one thing that we've always done is inside of the SIP Discord, I just drag and drop that entire report. I let everyone read what went wrong, how it went wrong, and these kind of things, because we can all learn from it.
Yeah, and so tell me about maybe call out one of those learnings, something that sort of maybe changed the way that you think pivotally about your software development stuff. Was there something you learned that was really insightful?
Yeah, absolutely. So the second or third pen test we've done, and this is something that actually gets joked about inside of the community still. It's one of the comments made by the pen tester was that it's magnificent that we're doing all of this as an open source thing, and they were impressed that an open source application having this kind of documentation and having this kind of code structure and all of these securities in place. But there was one thing we didn't do, and that was good error handling. And now that wasn't an issue per se. I thought like, okay, you know what does good error handling have to do with making sure that my application is safe? But then this guy came over and said like, okay, but what if I cause a crash that will show the tokens inside of an error code, or show security information inside of the error code, or your URL that people aren't supposed to see, or some backend information exposure? What if that happens? And the funny thing is that they wrote it inside of the report. Like, in some places, the error handling is lacking, and people make jokes about that because my error handling is still pretty piss poor, and the other contributors often have to pick up the slack on that and say like, nope, we're fixing this. This is now correct, and then it gets to go to the release.
Now
Um,
that you say this,
so
I don't remember seeing any error handling in any of your big PowerShell scripts in CyberDrain either, potentially. So,
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. The error handling was often one try catch block with at the bottom something failed error code, and then yeah, that wasn't exactly the way to go about that. So that's something that I did learn from the entire experience. It's security isn't just making sure that the application is safe and everything is safe. It's also information disclosure and how you navigate that complex maze. Um, it helped a lot to have contributors available that were always in the SaaS space to help me with understanding that a little bit more, and that they check the code as well. So I think that was one of the things that I was most surprised about during this entire adventure. Like, oh yeah, that's something you also have to think about.
Yeah. And do you feel like you've now incorporated it into your, planning and thinking overarchingly?
We actually inside of the entire SIP code base, there's active code testing, and one of the code tests is if there is correct error handling in place, if it passes through our error handling processor, which actually says like, okay, hey, if this or that shows up, remove it completely. These kind of things,
Yeah.
like sensitive information, that kind of stuff. So yeah, there's more provisions in place to make sure that I keep sticking to the plan that the security experts set out for us.
That's awesome. Well, congrats on that journey because it's just, there's so much to learn. Um, and sometimes, so limited time to really get some of this stuff into the workings of how you operate. And so it sounds like it's really made a difference. So very cool. And SIP continues to be impactful. Every day I see people talking about SIP. The Discord is super active. I poke
Yeah,
my head in there sometimes just to see sort of what kind of things people are talking about, what issues they're having. There's still a lot of frustrations with the whole, GDAP process. I think there was a lot of opportunities
yeah.
that Microsoft had to make that a simpler, smoother process. But, there's like, this is the tech debt, I think, that there is maybe on their end of things that prevents, doing a wholesale move of some of these technologies into the new era. So we'll see. But thanks for making that easier for everybody. SIP, everybody, if you haven't seen it, you should just search for SIP CIPP on GitHub.com. You'll find, or it's also linked from CyberDrain.com,
Yeah,
if I'm
yeah.
not mistaken. So you'll be able to employ that in your MSP. It just simplifies the management of your multi-tenant Microsoft 365 environments for your clients. It does this with grace and ease. There you go.
Yeah.
Um, let's jump over real quick to the CTO gig. A few years ago, you and I had a conversation about this in the context of career pathing, and a lot of people that are looking for a CTO type gig, maybe in corporate IT, maybe even at an MSP, find themselves wondering sort of what does really a CTO do? And I'm sure your own role has evolved a little bit over the years. And I'm curious if you could tell us now sort of what the CTO umbrella covers in your case with Lime.
So I think the biggest confusion that people have around being a CTO is that they still believe it to be a highly technical role, a role in which you have to understand all the technologies you worked with. Um, I absolutely agree that you have to be technical to be in a CTO position and have to understand how technology works and interacts. But you have to be much more about strategy and long term pathing instead about like, hey, where am I going to steer the direction of this company? Um, to what goals am I attaching myself and making sure that I achieve those? And that isn't just like, oh, hey, we're going to use Office 365 for 5 years. No, that is how are we going to make sure that we stay competitive using our M365 offering? That is thinking about how you price, but also how you put this specific technology in the market. How are you using these commoditized technologies? Because that's all that we're reselling these days. Everything that we're doing is commoditized. M365, Gmail, getting a machine set up, everyone can do it these days. There is no more technological need. There's no more need for hands-on keyboards. So you need to pivot. You need to pivot and you need to make sure that you are still satisfying your clients in the questions that they have. Those questions might also change over time. So I think in looking at it broadly, I still have the same perspective as I did years ago. You have to make sure that you keep current with technology and keep expanding on your current expertise, but
Mm,
you don't have to be the most technical guy in the room. I prefer not to be these days. My MSP has grown to a size where just recently, well, recently, I think about a year ago now, we had a very large migration, and one of my technical guys, I hopped into a call with one of my technical guys, and they were discussing these problems they had during the migration, and I started making suggestions, and I kid you not, he went like, Kelvin, maybe it's better that you shut up for a little bit because you don't understand what we're doing here. This is my most technical guy that just told me like, hands off, buddy. We know what we're doing and you don't. So that was confrontational. It was confrontational, understanding that it's not always about being the smartest guy in the room, the most technologically advanced guy in the room, and sometimes just taking a back seat and supporting those people, supporting the people that are.
Yeah, that is a challenge for sure. I think this industry is I won't say riddled, but is maybe struggles with trying to remove the ego from that equation. I went through it. I think as you sort of start to get out there and do more things and sort of figure stuff out, you start to depend on your smarts to do this. And then obviously your clients that are not even interested in technology, they just need it to work.
Yeah,
Um, there's just a natural leaning into taking over the conversation and being very technically term driven in those conversations, and so it takes a lot of expertise or just trial and error to get it out of that mindset over the years. And in my later years, and I sold the MSP last year, and so now I'm just dedicated to my work with ScalePad, which is a ton of fun. But I feel like I'm still very close to the whole mantra of the MSP, of course. And I still think about those days, and I remember sort of the pivot to being okay. How do I listen better? How do I listen more? And I feel like the CTO role is very much about understanding where everybody's minds are at. You're kind of a galvanizer of needs in order to really think about a strategic roadmap, whether it's internal or for one of your clients. And so it just kind of takes a bit of that maturing in the industry to understand how to do that job properly. It just doesn't always come easily to people. It's sort
yeah.
of trial by
I,
fire.
I think I think the not coming easy part is because most people that sort of roll into the being a CTO are highly technical people, and highly technical people are fixers. They want to solve the problem, and that isn't always the right approach, especially not when you're in a strategic role. Sometimes you don't want to fight that one symptom because it is just an issue that someone didn't think about strategy, or someone didn't think about the considerations that should have been had. And you have to take a step back instead of fix. You have to look what is going wrong and where is it going wrong, and let me go look at that instead. Let me
Yeah.
make a long-term solution instead of just a temporary fix.
I just saw on TikTok, my favorite educational medium these days. I saw this little interview clip with Steve Jobs, and he was being asked, how he thought about people development and culture and stuff like that. And he was saying how difficult it is for leaders, and I think this is not exclusive to just technical things, but it happens in all sorts of roles, for leaders to want to try and fix every issue that they encounter or that their people encounter. And so it was interesting to see him sort of reflect on that because, I figured out as hard as it is, and I still sort of mess up sometimes, I just have to figure out how to give the person the tools to figure out how to
Yeah.
solve this issue on their own, even if it takes us a little bit longer to solve that particular problem. And the challenge for MSPs, of course, is that there's always the time constraint, there's always an emergency, there's always a fire. And so, how do you balance those things? So, you got to get very, very self aware to know when you can actually sort of pause for a moment and be like, okay, here's an opportunity to give this person a learning environment and let them sort of
Yeah.
solve it for themselves. So interesting reflection. I love that you've gone through that and can do it now at a much higher scale, even when your when your technicians tell you get out
Yeah.
of the room. But
Get out of the room. Go away.
my gosh, that's so funny. Well, let me ask you something that is maybe a reverse question. Is there something about SIP? Is there something about MVP? Is there something about your CTO gig that that you like talking about that is sort of gives people an insight that I maybe haven't asked you about?
Um, Actually, like all of those things you just mentioned, I always see everything that was in the first category as my side projects. And like SIP, like the MVP, like the communities, they are on the side for me. And a lot of people underestimate that. They think like I'm full time dedicated to SIP, I'm full time dedicated to being in the communities, I'm full time dedicated to going to these events and seeing my friends and speaking there. Um, My MSP is the thing that I take most pleasure out of every day. Running an MSP is the most fun I can have. It has SIP is amazing, and I love working with MSPs. But sometimes they can actually be really be tools. That it's we are a demanding type of people. We need results immediate. As MSPs, we can be a bit abrasive at times because of time constraints, because we're worried about things, because we don't have a moment for to be kind, because there are people breathing down our necks. All of these, that there's a million reasons why it happens, but MSPs aren't as beautiful of clients as just having normal clients from every type of company in the world.
Come on,
It's
man!
I love
You're throwing the industry under the bus. I feel like we need a new tagline
a
for
little
SIP. You
bit.
know, building tools for the tools is the new tagline.
Exactly, exactly. No, I love MSPs. I do, and I love educating MSPs. But having clients like the gym on the corner, and then 5 minutes later speaking to the biggest PE firm in the world, saying like, "Hey, what are you guys looking for in terms of your technology in the coming weeks?" Where the fitness guy says like, "I just want my gym to work. I just want to make sure that the access gates keep working and that the equipment checks in and that I can see how long people are here." And the PE guy starts talking about, yeah, we just want to make sure that everything that we have is on the operational side and not so much on the capital expenses. And we want to make sure that we save money here and there, and we want to invest into security. So there's very different types of conversations that you're having with very different types of people.
Mm.
I get most of my pleasure from running my MSP because of that. I have some beautiful clients, which weirdly enough somehow go full circle back to the MSP community, because one of my clients recently got acquired by a large MSP venture capitalist firm, where the CTO of another large company was suddenly across the table from me, and we're like, "Don't we know each other from this?" Yes, we do, but now we're focused on something else. So it's funny how small your world actually becomes when you're inside of the MSP space. But the
I,
clients are amazing, and I will always love running my MSP most of all.
I've been grinning this whole time because you just made me remember a bit of like when I started doing IT, 20 years ago. The thing that at one point somebody asked me, what do you like about this? And I hadn't really ever given it any thought, and I eventually figured out that I loved walking into a surprise every day. And I started with residential IT, like a lot of people do, and eventually made it into business. And business is no different, by the way. Like when you go see a new prospect, a new client, it's kind of like this. My eyes get big. It's like this moment of wonder and opportunity, just because like, what am I gonna find when I walk through the door? And I always love that. And I think a lot of people experience a bit of that desire for surprise. I think we love the challenge of coming into an unknown situation and hopefully finding a way to solve the problem. And so I think we chase a lot of that. That what's the chemical in the body that when we get
A little bit of dopamine rush.
yeah, the dopamine rush of solving those problems. And it's also counterproductive because I think it especially when growth is concerned, and maybe we can talk about this with Lime, but I think where a lot of owner operated companies are on the smaller size, under 10 people kind of size, but the owner operators also love this dopamine rush, and it's difficult to slow down to do some of the longer term planning and work on the
Yeah.
long tail tasks and activities that are just going to take a longer time to do. And so have you gone through a bit of that? Has Lime gone through a little bit of that?
So I run Lime with two amazing partners, Daniel and Chris, and without them, I could not run my company. They are beautiful people, but we all suffered from the exact same thing. We grew from our tiny little company to what we are now, a company of significant size where we can't be involved in the day to day and everything anymore. And Daniel and Chris, we started asking each other a question a couple of years ago. I think 4 years ago. Should you be doing this? Like just confrontational during our management meeting, we'd complain about something and we'd ask each other, "Should you be doing this?" And then you actually get confronted with, "Oh wait, maybe I shouldn't." Like both Daniel and Chris, still as the CEO and CFO of Lime Networks, are doing account management because these were clients that they picked up ages ago and they enjoyed working for and they enjoyed talking to, and they're still thinking of them as their clients. But our entire technology stack has changed over time. The way that we do business has changed over time. The way that that our sales team and our marketing teams and our security teams, like we have all these teams now that are speaking to our clients that use very specific terminology to make sure that we don't confuse our clients. And then we come in and we kind of screw it all up. So it's very hard for those owner operators to take that step back and say, like, should I be doing this? And there will be a point in time where you're saying, I can't let this go. I'm too emotionally invested in it. That's okay too. But be fair to yourself at that moment, and make sure that you surround yourself with a team that's able to support you in still doing that, and make sure you start doing less of it for everyone and more for those passion cases.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it reminds me of the expression, just because I can, it doesn't mean I should.
Yeah.
Um, and, but interestingly, this week I spent the week in Raleigh. In fact, I was rushing to get here from the airport. I wasn't sure if I'd maybe be late to our stream, but I spent the week in Raleigh with the Enable folks. Robert Wilburn and Chris Massey put on a fantastic business transformation event, and there was a peer group thing. And one of the interesting things that I heard was this idea of overcome or challenging assumptions. And I think a lot of people go into strategic planning. It's kind of end of the year. A lot of MSPs will start thinking about 2024 any day now. And one of the things that sort of gets skipped over a lot is, like, what are some of the assumptions or conventional wisdom that we're operating under that maybe we need to challenge, that is causing some series of issues down the line. And it takes growing up a little bit to sort of take that step back and challenge the assumptions. And the MSP industry, I think, is riddled with some of these assumptions of things that have been beaten into MSPs academically for the last 20 years. But a lot is changing. The relationship with clients is changing now that we're having way more cybersecurity and just due diligence type of conversations, where the clients have to participate more in the relationship than they ever had. And a lot of people are not successfully making these transitions. And I'm curious, a bit of, Lime's story in that regard. How have you evolved around some of these changing requirements and evolving conversations with clients? I think it's fascinating.
That's a really good question. I don't think that we've changed enough to say that there has been a significant thing we've done that has changed our entire business. We've had a lot of micro change that, if looking back on it, looks like one really big change, but it's all just like taking one step, one foot at a time, making sure that you slowly grow towards what you need to be. So I can't pin one specific thing like this is a way that we're evolving.
And it doesn't
I
need
do
to
have
be
to
this
say
big
that.
thing, right?
Yeah,
Either. Like, I think micro adjustments are equally valuable as long as
exactly.
you're working towards them.
If you grow 1% every day, at the end of the year, you'll have grown 360. Well, how many days are there in a year again? Something like that. 365, maybe. No, yeah. So you'll have grown that much, and that's something that we focus on a lot at Lime Networks. I also think that our market could do with some growing up at specific moments in time. I'm one of the admins of slash RMSP, and you see a lot of MSPs there that are either very established or very young. Like that, there's always two extremes, and both of them reacting clashes sometimes, especially when a newer MSP comes with some ideas of how an MSP should work, and the established force says, no, that's not how we work. A good example of that is RMM. Every MSP should have an RMM, or you're not an MSP. That's not
Oh,
exactly
really?
true anymore
Do
these
do they?
days.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and there's some bigger and bigger assumptions, I think, coming our way that we need to challenge over the next little while, because I think the entire industry is kind of pivoting to some extent in many of these technologies. So I'm super interested in see how we manage that, just overarchingly, because it's a fascinating topic to think about.
Yeah, and it's not just technology. It's the way that MSPs operate. One of my friends, he says, I don't no longer call my MSP an MSP. we're sure we're a technology partner, and sure we do managed services, but we also do consulting and we also do project work, and we do that because there's still money to be made in that. Um, this is a bigger guy. This is a company that has like 100 employees now, and then suddenly out of nowhere, this smaller MSP, like 5 people, comes up to him and says like, "You're doing it wrong. You're not an MSP." I'm sorry, buddy, but he's already been so much further than you that he's taking the next step in evolving what his MSP is. And
Mm,
I think the definition of what an MSP is should slowly blend a little bit more with IT consulting, security consulting. And I'm not saying like, oh, everyone should be an MSSP and everyone should be a consultant and everyone. No, I'm not saying that
agreed.
at all. I'm
Yeah.
saying that the lines are getting very blurred, and over the next 5 to 10 years, they are going to continue getting more blurred because everyone understands commoditization of IT is something that's happening, and we need to pivot ourselves to make sure that we don't fall into some pit of oblivion where we're doing the same trick that we did 10 years ago.
Yeah, wow. That was such a salient topic from this week down in Raleigh is the commoditization, and what are you doing to differentiate yourself, and how are you evolving those conversations with clients to really, be ready for the next era of security and compliance and insurance driving a lot of our requirements.
Yeah.
And so yeah, a lot of change needs to happen. I'm scared that MSPs will wait until they're mandated to really start driving some of this stuff, because I think we're already late to the game. There was some ScalePad blog post that we published this week. CBC Canada was reporting, half of businesses have been breached in the last
Wow.
2 years. Some crazy stat, and Microsoft have some really interesting numbers on this too. And so clearly, people are just not getting the message, because I don't see a lot of inquiry from the small business owners on this, and so we're just not exposing them enough to some of this stuff. So I'm
Yeah.
interested in seeing how that evolves. Wow, man. Well, listen, this is truly a pleasure and a privilege for me. Every time I get, I feel a little, yeah, egocentric that I get to keep you all to myself for a conversation of this nature for this long. Thank you for sharing an entire hour of your time on a Friday night. I will, clink, clink, cheers to you and to William once again. Um, Thanks for hanging out. I'll see you at IT Nation
You'll see me
a
at
week.
IT Nation.
Yeah, a week from now. And thank you so much for your time. You are the
No
man.
problem, Luis. It's always fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah. All right, for everybody else, thank you for joining us every Friday at noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern. MSP Confidential, brought to you by ScalePad. Just trying to have some of these interesting conversations with some interesting people, and we'll hope to see you on the next one. Until then, have a good evening, wonderful weekend, and we'll see you very soon. Ciao.
See ya.